I was elbow-deep in bread dough when the doorbell rang. It was Sunday, my day for puttering around in sweatpants, mentally preparing for the workweek ahead. Marcus was in the garage tinkering with his project car. The bell rang again, more insistent, followed by 3 sharp knocks. Coming. I wiped my hands and shuffled to the door, not bothering to check my appearance. Whoever it was could deal with my messy bun and ancient Northwestern University sweatshirt. I opened the door and my stomach dropped. Evelyn, I said, the name sticking in my throat. There stood my mother-in-law, perfectly coiffed as always in a camel hair coat and silk scarf, 2 enormous suitcases flanking her like sentinels. Behind her, a taxi was already pulling away. "Natalie, darling," she exclaimed, air-kissing my cheeks before I could process what was happening. "You look comfortable." She sailed past me into the entryway, leaving her luggage as if it was understood I would handle it. The scent of her Chanel No. 5 mixed unpleasantly with the yeasty smell of my abandoned bread dough. We weren't expecting you," I managed. "Did Marcus know you were coming?" Evelyn was already examining our family photos, rearranging them slightly. "Oh, I wanted to surprise him. You know how my son loves surprises." I knew, in fact, that Marcus absolutely hated surprises. He was a planner, a trait I'd always appreciated about him. "Is he here?" she asked, peering around. "He's in the garage," I said automatically, then remembered the suitcases. 2 large suitcases. Not an overnight bag. 2 suitcases that suggested a much longer visit than I was prepared for. I reluctantly dragged them inside, my mind racing. Evelyn visited us twice a year, always with at least a month's notice, always staying for exactly 4 days. That was our unspoken arrangement. Now she was here, unannounced, with enough luggage for an extended campaign. "Marcus," I called, my voice higher than usual. "You have a visitor." I heard a clatter from the garage, then the sound of the side door. Footsteps approached and Marcus appeared, wiping grease from his hands. He froze when he saw his mother. "Mom." His confusion was evident, but there was something else. A wariness that made my heart sink. "What are you doing here?" Evelyn's face crumpled slightly. "Is that any way to greet your mother? I came all this way to see you." Marcus shot me a bewildered glance before embracing her. "Of course I'm happy to see you. I'm just surprised. You usually call first." "Well," she said, patting his cheek in that way that always made him look like a child, "sometimes life doesn't go according to plan, does it?" There was something in her tone that set off alarm bells. I studied her more carefully. The perfect makeup that didn't quite conceal the tiredness around her eyes, the slight tremor in her hand as she adjusted her scarf. "Evelyn," I said, trying to keep my voice gentle, "is everything okay?" She waved dismissively. "Everything's fine, dear. I just felt it was time for a visit. A nice, long visit with my son and his lovely wife." The pause before lovely was microscopic, but I'd become attuned to these small hesitations, these tiny spaces where her disapproval lived. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. A nervous habit. "How long were you planning to stay, Mom?" Another wave of her hand. "Oh, we don't need to worry about that now. I'm sure Natalie can make up the guest room for me, unless you've turned it into something else." The guest room was indeed still a guest room, though I'd been using it as a makeshift office as I worked on my dissertation. My papers were spread across the desk, books stacked on the floor, the corkboard covered in notes. 6 months of research chaos. "It's still the guest room," I said, forcing a smile. "But if you'd called ahead, I could have prepared it properly." "I'm sure it's fine as it is," she replied, already moving toward the stairs. "Marcus, be a dear and bring my bags up?" As Marcus hefted his mother's suitcases, he mouthed sorry to me over her shoulder. I nodded automatically, but inside my thoughts were churning. There was clearly something wrong. Evelyn thrived on control and planning, and this spontaneous appearance was wildly out of character. I returned to the kitchen where my bread dough had risen beyond its bowl, spilling over onto the counter. Like this situation, I thought grimly, already expanding beyond containment. I punched it down with perhaps more force than necessary. Upstairs, I could hear Evelyn's voice, the words indistinct but the tone carrying clearly, that mixture of criticism and concern she had perfected over decades of motherhood. By the time Marcus came back downstairs, I had the bread in the oven and was aggressively wiping down counters. "Nat," he began, his voice apologetic. "Don't," I interrupted, keeping my voice low. Just, what's going on? Why is she here? He leaned against the counter, looking bewildered. I have no idea. She says she just wanted to visit. With no warning? 2 massive suitcases? Marcus, something's wrong. He nodded slowly. I know. She's acting strange even for her. But she won't tell me anything. How long is she planning to stay? I asked, the practical question foremost in my mind. Marcus winced. She wouldn't say exactly. Just that she needs some quality time with us. The timer on the oven chirped, startling us both. Quality time, I repeated. Marcus, I have my dissertation defense in 3 weeks. I can't host your mother for an indefinite stay right now. I know, he said, running his hand through his hair again. I'll talk to her tonight, try to figure out what's really going on. Maybe she can stay through the weekend and then we can reassess. The weekend. 4 days away. I closed my eyes briefly, calculating how much this would set back my writing schedule. Fine, I said finally. The weekend. But then we need a plan. He leaned in to kiss my forehead. Thank you. I promise I'll handle this. From upstairs came the sound of Evelyn descending. Marcus and I separated slightly, both instinctively straightening our postures as she appeared in the kitchen doorway. It smells wonderful in here, she said, smiling as if she hadn't just upended our lives. Natalie, I had no idea you were such a domestic goddess these days. I forced a smile in return even as I felt my jaw tighten. Just Sunday baking. Nothing special. As Evelyn began to inspect our kitchen, opening cabinets and making small comments, I caught Marcus's eye. His apologetic expression did little to ease the knot forming in my stomach. Something told me this weekend was going to feel very, very long. By day 5 of Evelyn's unannounced visit, I was sleeping 4 hours a night and grinding my teeth so badly my jaw ached each morning. I'd commandeered a corner of the dining room table for my dissertation work, but it was a poor substitute for the guest room. Evelyn had a habit of appearing at my shoulder without warning, peering at my laptop screen and asking questions that were thinly disguised criticisms. My goodness, how can you concentrate with all these books everywhere? When I was in college, we kept things much more organized. The weekend had come and gone with no mention of departure plans. Instead, Evelyn had settled in like a particularly judgment-prone houseguest, rearranging the spice cabinet alphabetically, replacing our perfectly functional shower curtain with one she'd brought in her suitcase, and scheduling a landscaper to tidy up that unruly front yard without consulting either of us. Now it was Tuesday evening and I was attempting to work while Evelyn prepared dinner, an elaborate affair involving multiple pots and frequent commentary on my sparse kitchen equipment. Marcus was working late again, a coincidence that was beginning to feel suspiciously convenient. Natalie, Evelyn called over the sound of vigorous whisking, could you come taste this sauce? I can't tell if it needs more salt. I saved my document with a sigh and joined her in the kitchen, obediently sampling the béarnaise sauce she held out. It was, of course, perfect. Evelyn never asked for validation she didn't already know was deserved. It's delicious, I said honestly. She beamed. My Stanley always said I made the best béarnaise in Connecticut. Her late husband, Marcus's father, had been dead for 15 years, but he remained a frequent visitor in Evelyn's conversation. I'm sure he was right, I said, turning to go back to my work. He would have liked you, I think, she continued, surprising me. He appreciated determined women. Said they made the world more interesting. It was perhaps the closest thing to a genuine compliment she had ever given me. Thank you, I said, uncertain how to respond. Evelyn was silent for a moment, focusing on stirring her sauce. Then, I've been thinking, Natalie. This house really is too small for the two of you. And we were back to criticism. It suits us fine, I said, my guard rising. For now, perhaps. But when you start having children, you'll need more space. There's a lovely development in Framingham, near where my friend Caroline lives. Beautiful colonial homes with proper yards. The casual presumption, about children we hadn't decided on, about moving closer to her social circle, ignited a flare of irritation. We're happy here, Evelyn. And children aren't in our immediate plans. She turned to me, her expression a mixture of confusion and disapproval. But surely you're not waiting too much longer? You're what now? 34. 33, I corrected. And yes, we're waiting until I finish my PhD at least. Evelyn clicked her tongue softly. That's another 2 years, isn't it? Natalie, dear, I know education is important to you, but there are biological realities to consider. The biological realities, speech. Right on schedule. Marcus and I have discussed this extensively, I said evenly. We're on the same page about our timeline. Are you? She asked, her tone suggesting she knew something I didn't. Has he actually said he wants to wait that long? Before I could respond, we heard the front door open, followed by Marcus's voice. Evelyn's expression immediately brightened, the concerned mother-in-law vanishing behind a welcoming smile. In the kitchen, darling, she called. Dinner's almost ready. Marcus appeared, looking tired but relieved to find us in seemingly peaceful coexistence. He kissed his mother's cheek, then crossed to me, his hands settling at the small of my back in a small gesture of solidarity. Smells amazing in here, he said. What are we having? Your favorite, Evelyn answered before I could. Steak with béarnaise, roasted potatoes, and that asparagus with lemon the way you like it. It was indeed Marcus's favorite meal, one I had made for him on special occasions. The fact that Evelyn knew this, had appropriated this small tradition, felt like yet another boundary crossed. Later, after an uncomfortable dinner where Evelyn dominated the conversation with stories of Marcus's childhood, I cornered him in our bedroom. We need to talk about your mother, I said quietly. It's been 5 days, Marcus. She needs to leave. He sighed, sitting heavily on the edge of our bed. I know. I'm sorry. I've been trying to figure out what's going on, but she keeps dodging my questions. Have you asked her directly when she's planning to go? Because she's showing no signs of leaving anytime soon. I have, but she just gets emotional and talks about how little time we spend together. He ran his hands over his face. I'll try again tomorrow, I promise. I wanted to push harder, but the exhaustion in his face stopped me. He was caught between us, trying to balance loyalty to his mother with respect for his marriage. Okay, I said finally. But I'm serious, Marcus. I can't keep living like this. My defense is in 2 weeks. He nodded, pulling me into a hug. I know. I'll fix this. But the next day brought no resolution, nor did the day after that. Evelyn continued to make herself at home, her presence expanding to fill every corner of our house. I retreated further, spending more time at the university library, coming home only when necessary. By the end of the week, the tension had become a living thing, sitting at our dinner table, hovering in doorways, lurking in every forced smile and careful conversation. Something had to give, and soon before I lost my mind or my marriage. 10 days into Evelyn's stay, I came home late from the university library to find her and Marcus huddled over his laptop at the kitchen table. They separated quickly when I entered, a guilty flush creeping up Marcus's neck. What's going on? I asked, setting down my bag. Nothing, Marcus said too quickly. Just looking at some real estate listings. Evelyn smiled, smoothing her perfect hair. I've been showing Marcus some beautiful homes in Framingham. That development I mentioned. They have a 4-bedroom colonial available next month. I stared at them, a cold realization washing over me. This wasn't just about Evelyn needing a place to stay temporarily. This was about her reshaping our future, inserting herself permanently into our lives. We're not moving to Framingham, I said flatly. Natalie, dear, don't be hasty. These are wonderful homes, perfect for a growing family. And I'd be just down the street at Caroline's, so convenient for everyone. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Mom, I told you we're not planning to move right now. But you agreed the house was beautiful, she pressed. And with the baby you'll need more space. What baby? I interrupted, my voice sharp. An awkward silence fell. Evelyn looked from me to Marcus, her expression confused. You're not? I just assumed with all the morning sickness. I don't have morning sickness, I said, bewildered. But you're always in the bathroom when I get up and you look so pale lately. Because I'm exhausted, Evelyn. Because I'm trying to finish my dissertation while hosting an unexpected open-ended visit from my mother-in-law. Marcus stood. Mom, could you give us a minute? Evelyn rose with dignity, though her lips were pressed in a thin line. Of course. I'll go watch my show. She left the kitchen, her back ramrod straight. What the hell, Marcus? I hissed once she was out of earshot. You're looking at houses in Framingham now? I was just humoring her, he said defensively. She kept talking about it, so I agreed to look. I never said we'd move. But you didn't shut it down either, did you? Just like you haven't told her she needs to leave, or asked why she really showed up, or set any boundaries at all. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. What do you want me to do, Nat? He's my mother. She's going through something even if she won't admit it. And I'm your wife. Your wife who has been accommodating your uninvited mother for over a week while trying to finish a PhD. I know it's not fair to you. It's not just unfair, Marcus. It's untenable. I can't live like this. We stared at each other across the kitchen, the distance between us suddenly vast. In that moment I made a decision. I'm going to stay at Megan's for a few days, I said quietly. His face fell. What? Nat, no. We can work this out. I need space to finish my dissertation. And you need space to figure out what's going on with your mother. I moved past him to the stairs. I'll pack a bag. You're leaving? Just like that. His voice held equal parts hurt and disbelief. I turned to face him. I'm not leaving you, Marcus. I'm removing myself from an impossible situation so I can do the work I need to do. And maybe, when you don't have me here as a buffer, you'll actually deal with the Evelyn problem. Upstairs I packed quickly and methodically, clothes, toiletries, laptop, research notes. Enough for a few days of focused work. As I zipped my bag I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Evelyn stood in the doorway watching me. So you're running away, she said, no question in her tone. I straightened, meeting her gaze. I'm creating necessary space to complete my dissertation. Something that's been impossible since you arrived. She crossed her arms. Marcus is very upset. Yes, I imagine he is. Caught between his wife and his mother isn't a comfortable position. I shouldered my bag. But sometimes discomfort is necessary for growth. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish with this dramatic exit? I considered her question seriously. Clarity, I suppose. For all of us. Something flickered in her eyes, not anger but something more complex. I never intended to cause problems between you and Marcus. Didn't you? I asked quietly. From the moment you arrived, you've been inserting yourself into our routines, our decisions, our future plans. What did you think would happen? She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I just wanted to be needed. The simple admission caught me off guard. Before I could respond, she turned and walked away, leaving me alone with my packed bag and the echo of her words. Downstairs, Marcus waited by the front door, his expression a mixture of hurt and resignation. This isn't solving anything, he said as I approached. It's solving my immediate need for quiet to work, I replied. The rest will have to wait until after my defense. And us? Are we just on hold? I touched his cheek gently. We're paused, not stopped. I love you, Marcus. But your mother is driving me crazy and you won't set boundaries with her. I'll talk to her, he promised. Tonight. Figure out what's really going on. Good. I kissed him briefly. That's a start. As I drove to Megan's house, a strange mix of guilt and relief washed over me. This wasn't how I'd wanted things to go, but sometimes a strategic retreat was necessary before moving forward again. Whatever Evelyn's true reasons for appearing on our doorstep, it was time for answers and boundaries. I just hoped our marriage would be stronger, not weaker, once those boundaries were finally established. For 3 days I lost myself in academic work at Megan's house, grateful for the quiet and the absence of judgment. Marcus texted regularly, checking in, sending love, but notably not reporting any resolution with his mother. I responded with reassurances, but the silence on the Evelyn front spoke volumes. On the 4th morning, as I practiced my defense presentation, Megan knocked on the guest room door. There's someone here to see you, she said. My heart jumped. Marcus. She shook her head. Evelyn. For a moment I simply stared at her. Evelyn. Here. Megan shrugged. She's sitting in my living room right now, looking like she's appraising the furniture for an estate sale. I closed my laptop slowly, curiosity overriding my initial impulse to refuse the visit. What could be important enough to bring her here? Evelyn sat perched on the edge of Megan's eclectic sofa, looking out of place among the colorful throw pillows. She wore her camel coat despite the warmth of the house, her handbag balanced precisely on her knees. Natalie, she said, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Evelyn, I replied, remaining standing. This is unexpected. Yes, well. She adjusted her scarf nervously. Unexpected seems to be the theme lately. I didn't respond, waiting for her to explain. I've found an apartment, she said finally. A very nice one in a building near the library. I'm moving in tomorrow. I blinked, processing this information. That's good news. Yes, well, it seems things can move quickly when necessary. Her tone carried a hint of reproach. Why are you really here, Evelyn? I asked directly. Marcus doesn't know I came, she admitted. He's been upset since you left. Working constantly, barely eating. Just searching for apartments and staring at that note you left. I'm sorry to hear that, I said softly. But I needed space. Because of me, she said. Not a question but a statement of fact. Yes, I admitted. Because of you. To my surprise, she nodded, accepting this without defensiveness. I know I can be difficult. Stanley used to tell me I had a talent for making myself indispensable, whether people wanted me to be or not. It was such an accurate assessment that I almost laughed. Instead, I found myself sitting in the armchair across from her. Why did you really come to our house? I asked. Evelyn sighed, a small, controlled sound. My apartment building is being sold, converted to condominiums. I have to be out by the end of the month. She straightened her shoulders. But that's no excuse for imposing on you both the way I did. It was perhaps the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from her. You could have just asked for help, I pointed out. We would have helped you find a new place. Asking for help has never been my strength, she said with a small smile. And then once I was there in your home, I saw how happy Marcus was with you, how well you fit together. It made me feel superfluous. The vulnerability in that admission struck me forcefully. For the first time, I glimpsed the woman beneath the perfect exterior. Aging, afraid of loneliness, watching her only child build a life that didn't center around her anymore. You're not superfluous, Evelyn, I said quietly. You're Marcus's mother. You'll always be important to him. She nodded, blinking rapidly. Yes, well, perhaps I needed to be reminded that being important to him doesn't mean controlling his life. Or yours. She reached into her handbag and withdrew a small envelope. This is the key to your house. I'll be gone by the time you come home. She also handed me a small stack of photographs, candid shots from our wedding day that I'd never seen before. Marcus helping me out of the car, us laughing as we signed the marriage certificate, a quiet moment on a park bench afterward. I had a friend take them, Evelyn explained. I was going to have them framed as a wedding gift, but then, well, I wasn't sure you'd want them. Unexpected tears filled my eyes. These precious moments, captured and kept hidden for 5 years because of the tension between us. He loves you very much, you know, Evelyn said softly. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. And I haven't made it easy for either of you. I know that now. She rose gracefully. Your defense is soon? Next week, I managed. You'll do brilliantly, I'm sure, she said with surprising sincerity. As she stepped toward the door, she turned back. He's a lot like his father, you know. Loyal to a fault, terrible at confrontation, but capable of tremendous love. Stanley and I had our share of battles, but we always found our way back to each other. I know you and Marcus will too. That night, I finished my final presentation slides and called Marcus. Your mom came to see me today, I said after we'd exchanged gentle greetings. She what? The shock in his voice was genuine. She told me she found an apartment. That she's moving out tomorrow. I hesitated, then added, I'm coming home tomorrow too. If that's all right. The relief in his exhale was audible. Of course it's all right. It's your home too. Our home, I corrected, echoing his words from earlier days. He laughed softly. Our home. I'll be here. After we hung up, I stood by the window looking out at the night sky. 3 weeks of invasion, 4 days of separation, and somehow we'd arrived at a new place. Not quite healed but ready to begin the process. I thought of Evelyn in her new apartment, starting over. I thought of Marcus waiting for my return. I thought of my dissertation nearly complete. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Rebuilding trust with Marcus, establishing new boundaries with Evelyn, preparing for my defense. But tonight I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Not the easy hope of perfect resolutions, but the more complex hope that comes from facing difficult truths and choosing to move forward anyway. His mother had come to our house uninvited, and I had wanted her to leave. In the end, she had, not just physically but in the more important sense of stepping back from the center of our marriage, creating space for Marcus and me to reconnect and rebuild. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a beginning we could work with.